and you can argue, and I certainly would, that the Falcons' red zone issues early in the game were mostly due to Matt Ryan's poor passing, poor placement, poor accuracy, poor decision making, and that's something that's going to have to improve because Matt Ryan has played a decade in Atlanta and has generally done a good job in that area. I certainly think there's much more reason to be confident that he'll bounce back, despite some skepticism whether Sark will be able to make those improvements. Fortunately for the Falcons' offensive line, this Eagles defensive front is probably going to be the best one that they face all year, but they will get another challenge this week against Carolina. They'll get another challenge in a couple of weeks against Cincinnati, and those are going to be two of the better fronts that they face early in the season, and they will face some other challenges as we get further along in the season. So they'll have to also bounce back this week as well if we want to see improvements. Looking ahead to the Falcons' Week 2 matchup against Carolina, in light of the injuries that's occurred in that Week 1 game, Keanu Neal going down for the season, Deion Jones, we just found out today, is not going to play for a while. He's going on IR. It sounds like the Falcons plan on putting him on the short-term IR, which is basically an 8-week thing. So we won't see him until after at least the bye week, which I think, if my math is correct, the Cleveland game in Week 10 is the earliest we'll see him back in the lineup. But those are two devastating losses. Those are two of arguably the three most important players with the Falcons, with Grady Jarrett being that third player. Those guys are sort of the backbone of this defense, with Jarrett in the middle, Neal in the middle, and Jones in the middle. And so missing two of those pieces is really going to be problematic for the Falcons in this Carolina game, just because so much of their success at slowing down this Panthers team is going to be based off of their ability to stop Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey in that running game. And without Neal, we saw last week against Philadelphia that the Falcons' defense struggled to stop the run. That's not all on the fact that Neal was out of the lineup, but a lot of it is. With Deion Jones being their most consistent stopper in the middle, that's going to be even harder now that you have Duke Riley starting at middle linebacker this week with the expectation, as well as Foye Olakun starting at weak side linebacker. You just don't have guys that are as reliable at slowing down some of these weapons that the Panthers have. We saw last year in that Week 17 game against Carolina, Deion Jones was primarily responsible with containing Christian McCaffrey and did an outstanding job in that game. And so you're not going to have that guy. And so it's a big question whether Duke Riley's up for the task, or whether DeMonte Casey's up for the task, or whether Foye Olakun's up for that task. None of those guys have been tested in that way. And, of course, then you have to deal on top of that with Cam Newton and C.J. Anderson and hit their running ability, in addition to both McCaffrey's ability as a pass catcher and a runner. It's a very complicated series of matchups that we'll have to see if the Falcons can find a way to navigate them. But on top of that, the best defense for the Falcons this week is going to be a good offense. And that's going to be a tough challenge against this Carolina defense, which has routinely had success against the Falcons outside of 2016. We saw last season in the two Panther games, the Falcons combined for, I think, 39 points in those two games. We saw them go up against Buffalo, who are coached by Sean McDermott, who used to run that Panthers defense years ago, and they only scored 17 points in that game. So that is a defensive style that routinely the Falcons struggled against, at least in 2017. And if Sark is no better than what he was in 2017, that remains a question mark for this team moving forward. So those are going to be the big questions with this team. I think the Falcons obviously have an opportunity to win this game against Carolina. They are, I believe, in the Cam Newton era, 5-2 against the Panthers at home. So obviously they've had a lot of success at home, and so there's reason to be optimistic. But there's going to be a lot more challenges going into this Week 2 game than I think a lot of people expected. And I do think there's a good possibility that the Falcons could potentially fall into an 0-2 hole if they don't live up to expectations this week and have a repeat performance in terms of subpar play like they had against the Eagles in Week 1. So we'll have to see about that. As you can tell, we're still sponsored by MyBookie.AG. You guys can go ahead and check out their mobile site, which is easy to use, and place your picks. If I was going to put out one pick out there, wrapping things up, I would probably, at least one upset pick, I would probably take the Panthers this week. They're minus or plus 5.5 right now against the Falcons, and I feel like given the Falcons' issues, I think that's a pretty good bet to see the Falcons potentially lose that game. So, if you're trying to make money, I would probably put money on the Panthers. I know I have, so I apologize in advance, but I think it's going in that direction. So we'll have to see. I have been wrong about Falcons games in the past, so I know many of you are hoping I'm going to be wrong about that, but we'll have to see. I would also put money on the team that just beat the Falcons as my sort of favorite to win. I think they're -3 against the Buccaneers, if I'm not mistaken. So there's the Eagles. So I think they probably will win by more than a field goal. I think the Buccaneers' explosion against the Saints in Week 1 was promising for that team, but I don't expect a repeat performance of that, given the challenges that the Eagles' defense that we as Falcon fans are very familiar with will present for them. So that would be my favorite pick of the week. But go check out MyBookie.AG and place your bets if you feel compelled to do so. You want to make a little bit of extra cash this week. But that's it, guys. Just sort of a brief episode to keep you guys, sated for the next couple of days. We're hoping to come back on Thursday with both Scott and I to do a full-fledged show, getting more in-depth and getting Scott's thoughts on last week's game as well as this upcoming week's matchup. But until then, guys, definitely check out Falcons Central Radio on ProFootballCentral.com. Check us out on Facebook, same site. Give us a like while you're there. Also, subscribe to Pro Football Central's YouTube page so that you can watch the show. Hit that bell icon, and you can send in any mailbag questions that you have about last week or this week using the hashtag Falcons mailbag. And also you can send them over to my Twitter handle, which is FalcFans, and Scott is Karasik S, or you can send them over to the PF Central Twitter page as well, Falcons PFC as well. So I appreciate you guys for joining me for this brief show, and we'll be out of here and back in a couple of days.